Marcus Webb had been invisible for so long that he'd almost forgotten what it felt like to be seen. Every morning at 5:30, he pushed through the service entrance of the Paramount Grand Hotel in downtown Los Angeles, his worn sneakers squeaking against polished marble that cost more per square foot than his monthly rent. The hotel gleamed with the kind of wealth that made people like Marcus disappear into the background, just another pair of hands keeping the machinery of luxury running smoothly. He was 42 years old, though the lines around his eyes suggested older. Life had a way of aging people who worked 3 jobs just to keep their heads above water. The janitor uniform hung loose on his frame, navy blue with his name stitched in red thread over the pocket. It was the only piece of clothing anyone here ever saw him wear, and to them, it might as well have been an invisibility cloak. The morning shift was always the same. Marcus cleaned the executive suites on the top 3 floors, where movie producers, tech billionaires, and foreign investors stayed when they came to make their deals. He'd learned to move like a ghost through their world, emptying trash cans filled with $100 wine bottles, scrubbing toilets that cost more than his car, picking up towels that would be thrown away after single use. The waste used to bother him. Now it was just Tuesday. What the guests didn't know, what nobody knew, was that Marcus had once been someone different. 10 years ago, he'd been a boxing coach at a respected gym in East L.A., training kids who needed discipline and hope in equal measure. He'd been good at it too, turning troubled teenagers into focused athletes, teaching them that the ring was just a metaphor for life. Then his daughter got sick. Leukemia, the doctors said, and suddenly nothing else mattered. The medical bills piled up faster than he could count them, burying him under an avalanche of debt that no amount of honest work could climb out from under. The gym closed. Marcus took whatever work he could find. And somewhere along the way, he'd become invisible. Today started like any other day until he pushed his cleaning cart onto the 20th floor and heard the voices. 3 men stood outside the penthouse suite, dressed in expensive suits that probably cost more than Marcus made in 6 months. They were laughing, that particular kind of cruel laughter that rich men use when they think nobody important is listening. "Did you see that janitor downstairs?" One of them said, a thick-necked man with slick-back hair and a watch that caught the light like a warning. "Guy looks like he's already dead. Just going through the motions." "That's what happens when you give up," another one chimed in, shorter but with the same predatory smile. "No ambition, no drive. These people accept their place in life. It's almost sad." The third man, tall with silver hair and cold blue eyes, shook his head. "It's not sad. It's natural selection. The strong rise, the weak serve. That's how the world works." Marcus kept his head down, pushing his cart past him as if he hadn't heard a word. His hands gripped the plastic handle tighter than necessary, knuckles going white, but his face remained blank. He'd learned that trick a long time ago. Never let them see that they got to you. Never give them the satisfaction. But someone else had heard them too. At the end of the hallway, standing near the elevator with a cup of coffee in his hand, was a man Marcus vaguely recognized. Shorter than average, muscular build, with a shaved head and the kind of intense eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He was wearing simple clothes, jeans, and a dark shirt, nothing flashy. But there was something about the way he held himself that suggested danger, like a weapon waiting to be unsheathed. The man watched Marcus push his cart around the corner. Then he looked back at the 3 men in suits, still laughing about people they considered beneath them. Something flickered across his face, an expression that was equal parts contempt and calculation. Marcus didn't know it yet, but his invisible life was about to become very, very visible. The man by the elevator was Jason Statham, and he had just made a decision that would change everything. Jason Statham had never been one to ignore injustice, especially the casual kind that powerful people inflicted without a second thought. He'd grown up in rough circumstances himself, the son of a lounge singer and a street seller in Shirebrook, England. He knew what it was like to be looked down on, to be dismissed because of where you came from or what you did for a living. Those 3 men in their $1,000 suits had no idea who was standing 20 feet away, and that suited him just fine. He'd come to Los Angeles for a meeting about a new film project, something gritty and real that reminded him why he'd gotten into acting in the first place. The Paramount Grand was where his agent had insisted they stay, though Jason found these kinds of places suffocating. Too much pretense, too much performance. Everyone was always acting, even when the cameras weren't rolling. But now he had a different kind of project in mind. Jason followed at a distance as Marcus made his way through the 20th floor, cleaning rooms with methodical efficiency. The janitor moved with an economy of motion that spoke of years of practice, but there was something else there too. Jason had trained as a competitive diver before his acting career, had spent years as a model and street performer, and he recognized the physicality of someone who'd once been an athlete. The way Marcus shifted his weight, the controlled precision of his movements, it all suggested a past that didn't match his present. Over the next 3 days, Jason watched. He wasn't stalking, exactly. He was observing. He wanted to understand who Marcus Webb really was beneath the uniform and the exhaustion. He learned that Marcus always arrived early and stayed late. He learned that the other hotel staff respected him, greeting him with genuine warmth that the guests never saw. He learned that Marcus ate lunch alone in the basement break room, usually just a sandwich brought from home, reading a battered paperback during his 30-minute break. On the third day, Jason made his move. He waited in the 20th floor hallway until Marcus appeared with his cart, then dropped his wallet right in the janitor's path. It was obvious, almost comically so, but Jason wanted to create an opening for conversation. Marcus noticed the wallet immediately, picked it up, and looked around for whoever had dropped it. His eyes landed on Jason, who was pretending to study his phone a few yards away. "Excuse me, sir," Marcus said, his voice quiet but steady. "I think you dropped this." Jason looked up and smiled, the kind of genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Bloody hell, I did. Thank you, mate." He took the wallet and pulled out $200 bills. "Hey, for your trouble." Marcus shook his head. "That's not necessary. I was just doing the right thing." "I insist," Jason pressed, but Marcus had already turned back to his cart. "I appreciate it, but no thank you," Marcus said firmly. "Have a good day, so." Jason watched him walk away, impressed despite himself. Most people would have taken the money without a second thought. Marcus Webb had principles, the kind that couldn't be bought or bent. That evening, Jason did something he rarely did anymore. He used his connections. A few phone calls to the right people, and he had Marcus's full background check on his phone. The story it told was heartbreaking and familiar. A good man brought down by circumstances beyond his control, struggling not for luxury but for basic survival. The medical debt alone was staggering, over $300,000, even after his daughter had passed away 2 years ago. Jason felt something tighten in his chest. His own daughter was 8 years old, healthy and happy, living in London with her mother. He couldn't imagine the pain of losing her, let alone being crushed under the financial weight of that loss for years afterward. The 3 men from the hallway were also easy to research. Richard Castellano, Marcus Finch, and David Stromberg, partners in a private equity firm that specialized in buying struggling businesses, stripping them for parts, and selling off the remains. They'd made their fortunes on the backs of people like Marcus, destroying jobs and lives with a stroke of a pen, all perfectly legal and utterly ruthless. They were staying at the Paramount Grand for a week-long conference on investment strategies. They'd be here for 4 more days, hosting a private party in the penthouse on Saturday night. The invitation list read like a who's who of Los Angeles power players, everyone from studio executives to city council members. Jason made another decision, this one colder and more calculated than the first. He pulled up his contacts and started making calls. By midnight, he had the pieces in place. By morning, the trap would be set. Marcus Webb was about to get a chance he never asked for and probably didn't want. But Jason had learned a long time ago that sometimes the universe needed a push in the right direction. Sometimes the invisible needed to be seen, and sometimes the powerful needed to be reminded that they weren't as untouchable as they thought. The game was on, and Jason Statham played to win. Saturday arrived with a kind of perfect Los Angeles weather that made the city feel like a movie set. Marcus started his shift knowing it would be brutal. The penthouse party meant extra cleaning beforehand, extra vigilance during, and extra mess afterward. The hotel had assigned him to work the event directly, serving as part of the invisible staff that would keep drinks flowing and surfaces spotless while the powerful people pretended they were alone. What Marcus didn't know was that Jason Statham had spent the previous 2 days orchestrating something unprecedented. He'd called in favors from directors, producers, and studio heads. He'd contacted journalists from major publications. He'd even reached out to a few friends in less conventional circles, people who knew how to make things happen without leaving fingerprints. The centerpiece of Jason's plan was simple but devastating. He'd learned that Richard Castellano and his partners were using this party to announce their latest acquisition, a chain of community gyms across Southern California that they planned to convert into luxury fitness centers. The existing members, mostly working-class families who paid affordable rates, would be priced out. The employees would be fired and replaced. It was profit over people, exactly the kind of thing these men had built their empire on. Jason intended to make sure the world was watching when they announced it. The party began at 8. Marcus pushed a service cart loaded with fresh linens and cleaning supplies into the penthouse, trying to make himself even more invisible than usual. The space was enormous, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the city that stretched to the ocean. Guests mingled with champagne glasses, their laughter and conversation creating a wall of noise that Marcus had learned to tune out. He worked quietly, replacing towels in the bathroom, emptying trash bins, staying out of the way. Nobody looked at him. Nobody ever did. Then Jason Statham walked in. The energy in the room shifted immediately. Heads turned. Conversations paused. Celebrity had its own gravity, and Jason pulled focus without even trying. He was dressed casually, dark jeans and a fitted black shirt, but he carried himself with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was worth. Richard Castellano spotted him immediately and moved in with practiced ease. "Mr. Statham, what an unexpected pleasure. I didn't realize you were interested in our little gathering." Jason smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm always interested in how business gets done in this city. Heard you're making an announcement tonight." "We are indeed," Castellano said, puffing up with self-importance. "The acquisition of East Side Fitness Centers. 15 locations, prime real estate, enormous potential once we upgrade the facilities and adjust the membership structure." "Adjust meaning price out the current members?" Jason asked, his voice casual but carrying an edge. Castellano's smile faltered slightly. "Meaning position the brand for a more premium market. These facilities are currently undervalued. We're simply maximizing their potential by destroying communities that depend on them," Jason said flatly. The conversation around them had started to quiet. People were listening now, sensing tension. Castellano's face hardened. "It's just business, Mr. Statham. Perhaps in your industry, sentiment matters. In mine, numbers are what count. Some people win, some people lose. That's capitalism." "And some people rig the game," Jason replied. Before Castellano could respond, Jason turned and did something that made everyone in the room freeze. He looked directly at Marcus, who was cleaning a table in the corner, trying desperately to disappear into the wallpaper. "You there," Jason called out, his voice carrying across the room. "The janitor. Come here, please." Marcus's heart stopped. Every instinct told him to refuse, to keep his head down, to stay invisible. But something in Jason's voice wasn't a request. It was a lifeline, though Marcus didn't understand why or how. He walked over slowly, acutely aware that every eye in the room was on him now. He could feel their judgment, their confusion at why someone like him were being addressed by someone like Jason Statham. "What's your name?" Jason asked, though Marcus suspected he already knew. "Marcus Webb, so." "How long have you worked here, Marcus?" 3 years, so." Jason nodded, then turned back to Castellano, including the whole room in what came next. "Marcus here. He works 3 jobs. I checked. Cleans his hotel in the morning, does maintenance at an office building in the afternoon, drives for a ride-share service at night. You know why." Nobody answered. The room was silent now except for the ambient noise of the city far below. "Medical debt," Jason continued. "His daughter had leukemia. He spent everything he had trying to save her, went into debt that would break most people, and she died anyway. That was 2 years ago. He's still paying for the privilege of having loved his child, still working himself into the ground just to survive." Marcus felt his face burn. He wanted to sink through the floor. This wasn't help. This was humiliation on a grand scale. But Jason wasn't finished. 10 years ago, Marcus was a boxing coach. Trained kids in East L.A., kept them off the streets, taught them discipline. He was good at it. Really good. Then life happened, and now he's invisible. Now he's the guy you people don't even see when you walk past him in the hallway. Jason's voice had gone cold, each word precise and cutting. But I saw him, and I saw you three. He pointed at Castellano and his partners, laughing about people you think are beneath you, making jokes about how the weak serve the strong. Castellano's face went red. Now wait just a minute. I'm not done, Jason cut him off, and something in his tone made the millionaire shut his mouth. See, here's what's going to happen. You're going to cancel that acquisition. You're going to leave those gyms alone, let them keep serving the communities that need them, and you're going to set up a fund, a real fund with real money, to help people like Marcus who got crushed by medical debt through no fault of their own. Oh, what? Castellano sputtered. You'll glare at me? This is ridiculous. Jason smiled, and it was terrifying. Or I make a phone call, and every news outlet in the city runs a story about how 3 billionaires mocked a janitor who lost his daughter, then bought up community gyms to price out working families. I've already got the journalists here tonight. By the way, they're waiting outside. Your choice how this plays out. The room erupted in urgent whispers. Castellano looked around desperately, realizing the trap had already closed around him. Marcus stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. His invisible life had just exploded into the spotlight, and he had no idea if he'd just been saved or destroyed. The silence after Jason's ultimatum stretched like a rubber band pulled to its breaking point. Castellano's face cycled through shades of red and purple, his jaw working but no words coming out. His partners looked equally panicked, their eyes darting to the other guests, calculating the social and financial cost of what was unfolding. Marcus wanted to run. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to get out of this room, away from these people, back to the safety of invisibility. But his legs wouldn't move. He stood there, exposed and vulnerable, while the most powerful people in Los Angeles stared at him like he was an exhibit in a museum. This is blackmail, David Stromberg finally said, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. You can't just threaten us into. Into what? Jason interrupted smoothly. Into being decent human beings. Into not profiting off the destruction of communities. Call it whatever you want. Mate, the cameras are waiting outside. So are the journalists. I can have them in here in 30 seconds, or you can make the right choice. You're bluffing, Marcus Finch said, though he didn't sound convinced. Jason pulled out his phone and held it up. One call. That's all it takes. His finger hovered over the screen. The story's already written. Private equity predators mock grieving father, then target community gyms. It practically writes itself. The only question is whether you're in damage control mode or full crisis mode. Castellano's hands balled into fists at his sides. You have no idea who you're dealing with. We have lawyers, connections, power that you can't even imagine. I'm sure you do, Jason said calmly. But I've got something better. I've got the truth, and I've got a platform. You think your lawyers can spin this fast enough to save your reputation? In this age of social media, by tomorrow morning, you will be the most hated men in America. Your investors will run. Your deals will collapse. Your names will be synonymous with everything people hate about the 1%. The calculation happened in Castellano's eyes, visible to anyone who knew how to read desperation. He was weighing his options, running scenarios, looking for an exit strategy that didn't exist. How much? Castellano finally asked, his voice hollow. How much for this fund you're talking about? 10 million, Jason said without hesitation. Split 3 ways. And you leave the East Side fitness centers alone. Permanently. That's insane, Stromberg protested. We've already invested millions in that acquisition. Then you'll take a loss, Jason said coldly. Consider it penance. Consider it buying back a shred of human decency. I honestly don't care what you tell yourselves. But you'll do it, and you'll do it publicly, and you'll do it with a smile. The 3 men looked at each other, having a silent conversation that Marcus could almost feel. They were trapped and they knew it. Jason had outplayed them completely, using their own arrogance as a weapon against them. Fine, Castellano said finally, the words seeming to cause him physical pain. We'll set up the fund. We'll cancel the acquisition. But this doesn't mean. It means exactly what I say it means. Jason cut him off. And one more thing. Marcus here is going to be the first recipient of that fund. Every dollar of his medical debt paid in full. Tonight. Marcus felt his knees go weak. The room spun. $300,000. Gone. Just like that. It wasn't possible. Things like this didn't happen to people like him. You're out of your mind, Finch said, but his voice had lost its fight. I'm out of patience, Jason corrected. So here's how this plays out. We're going to walk out to where those journalists are waiting. You're going to announce your generous donation to help families crushed by medical debt. You're going to explain how meeting Marcus tonight opened your eyes to the struggles of working people. You're going to be humble and gracious and thankful for the opportunity to give back. And if you do it convincingly enough, maybe, just maybe, the story doesn't destroy you. And if we refuse? Castellano asked, though they all knew the answer. Then I make a phone call, and your world ends. Jason's voice was matter-of-fact, stating a simple truth. Your choice, gentlemen. The party guests had been watching this entire exchange like spectators at a tennis match, their heads swiveling back and forth. Some looked shocked. Others looked thrilled at the drama. A few looked uncomfortable at being witnesses to the dismantling of powerful men. Castellano took a deep breath, straightened his tie, and forced something resembling a smile onto his face. Very well. Let's go meet your journalists. As the group moved toward the door, Jason turned to Marcus and spoke quietly, just between them. I know this isn't what you wanted. I know you'd rather stay invisible. But sometimes the world needs to see what it's been ignoring. Sometimes people like you need to be reminded that you matter. Marcus found his voice, though it came out rough. Why? Why would you do this for me? You don't even know me. Jason's expression softened. Because I've been where you are. Maybe not exactly, but close enough. And because those bastards needed to learn that their actions have consequences. And mostly because it was the right thing to do. He paused, then added, Also, I checked. You're still licensed as a boxing coach. That license doesn't expire. You didn't give up. You just got knocked down. I don't understand, Marcus said, tears threatening to spill over. You will, Jason replied. Now come on. You're about to become a very wealthy man with a very different life. Try to look surprised for the cameras. They walked out of the penthouse together, the janitor and the movie star, followed by three of the most powerful men in Los Angeles who had just learned that power had its limits. The journalists were indeed waiting, cameras ready, questions prepared. Marcus Webb's invisible life was over. What came next was up to him. 6 months later, Marcus stood in front of a building in East LA that had been abandoned for 3 years. The windows were boarded up, graffiti covered the walls, and weeds pushed through cracks in the concrete. But Marcus didn't see what it was. He saw what it could be. The money from Castellano and his partners had done more than erase his debt. After that night at the Paramount Grand, the story had gone viral exactly as Jason had predicted. The internet had embraced Marcus as a symbol of everything wrong with America's healthcare system and economic inequality. Donations had poured in from people who saw themselves or their loved ones in his story. A GoFundMe campaign had raised an additional $2 million before Marcus had asked them to close it and redirect donations to other families in medical debt. Jason Statham had become an unexpected but constant presence in his life. The actor had taken a personal interest in Marcus's future, helping him navigate the sudden attention, connecting him with lawyers and financial advisors, making sure the money actually changed his life instead of just passing through it. You're still licensed as a boxing coach, Jason had reminded him during one of their meetings. So what are you waiting for? Marcus had 1,000 excuses. He was too old, too tired, too damaged by everything that had happened. But Jason had looked at him with those intense eyes and said, You know what I see when I look at you? I see a fighter who never quit, even when life gave him every reason to. I see someone who can teach kids what real strength looks like. So stop making excuses and start making a difference. Now Marcus was making that difference. The building in front of him will become the Marcus Webb Community Boxing Center. Free training for any kid who wanted it, regardless of ability to pay. A safe space where discipline and respect mattered more than money. A place where invisible kids could become visible. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to see Jason approaching, dressed in workout clothes and carrying a duffel bag. "Thought you might need some help with the renovation," Jason said with a grin. "I'm pretty handy with a sledgehammer." "You don't have to do this," Marcus said, not for the first time. "You've already done more than anyone could ask." "Who said I'm doing it for you?" Jason replied, "I've got a daughter, remember? I want her growing up in a world where people look out for each other, where someone like you gets a second chance. Besides, I could use a proper training session. Movie fights are one thing. Real boxing is another." Over the next 3 months, they work on the building together. Jason brought in friends from the film industry. Construction workers volunteered their time. Local businesses donated materials. The community rallied around the project in a way that reminded Marcus why he'd become a coach in the first place. The grand opening fell on the anniversary of his daughter's death. Marcus stood in the newly renovated gym, surrounded by boxing rings and heavy bags and speed bags, with photos of great fighters on the walls. But the largest photo was of his daughter, smiling in her hospital bed, weak from treatment but still beautiful, still his little girl. "She'd be proud of you," Jason said quietly, standing beside him. "I hope so," Marcus replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I spent so long being angry at the world for taking her, angry at myself for not being able to save her. I forgot that the best way to honor her is to save other kids, not from illness, but from giving up, from thinking they don't matter." The doors opened and kids started flowing in, their families behind them. There were over 50 enrolled for the first session, with a waiting list that was growing daily. Rich kids and poor kids, different races and backgrounds, all coming together in a place where the only thing that mattered was how hard you were willing to work. Marcus stepped into the center of the main ring and looked at the gathered crowd. He saw parents who worked multiple jobs like he once had. He saw kids with hunger in their eyes, looking for something to believe in. He saw hope, raw and desperate and beautiful. "Welcome to the Marcus Webb Community Boxing Center," he began, his voice steady and strong. "Some of you know my story. Some of you don't. Either way, it doesn't matter. What matters is this: everyone in this room has value. Everyone here deserves respect. And everyone here has a potential to be great, but only if you're willing to do the work." He paused, looking at each face in tone. Boxing isn't about violence. It's about discipline. It's about learning to get hit and get back up. It's about understanding that the fight isn't against the person across from you. The fight is against the voice in your head that says you're not good enough, not strong enough, not worth the effort. This gym is where you learn to win that fight. The speech continued, outlining rules and expectations, but Marcus could see he already had them. They were listening. They were hungry. They were ready. After the ceremony, as parents filled out paperwork and kids explored the equipment, Jason pulled Marcus aside one last time. "I have to head back to London next week," he said. "New film project. But I'll be back in a few months. Keep me posted on how things go." "I will," Marcus promised. "And Jason, thank you for seeing me when everyone else looked right through me, for reminding me that I wasn't finished, for everything." Jason smiled, and this time it was pure and genuine. "You did this yourself, mate. I just gave you a push. The rest was all you." He held out his hand. "Stay in touch, and keep fighting the good fight." They shook hands, two men from different worlds who had found common ground in the simple idea that people mattered, that dignity wasn't a luxury, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was refuse to let someone stay invisible. As Jason walked away, Marcus turned back to his gym, to his kids, to his new life. The old Marcus Webb, the invisible janitor, was gone. In his place was something stronger, something tempered by loss and hardship and unexpected grace. He was a coach again, a mentor, a fighter who had learned that the greatest victories weren't won in the ring, but in the hearts of people who dared to believe they were worth fighting for. 6 months ago, he'd been invisible. Today, he was seen. And tomorrow, he would help others discover their own visibility, their own worth, their own fight. The bell rang for the first training session. Marcus stepped into the ring and got to work. His daughter's picture watched over him, and somewhere in London, Jason Statham smiled, knowing that the best fight scenes are the ones that happen off camera, in real life, when someone decided that enough was enough and the world needed to change. They had laughed at the janitor, but Jason Statham had been listening, and together they had turned mockery into meaning, invisibility into impact, and pain into purpose. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning.